Rev up your engines!
Garo says, Sonny, opinions on Saturn cars in general. GM branched off and said, we're going to make a different type of car. We're going to call it Saturn. Started making little cars with four-cylinder engines, and they were okay cars. They weren't great cars, but they were cheaper cars, and, you know, they kind of ran okay. But it was GM. So as time went on, they started making them cheaper and cheaper. Now, the customers of mine that had standard transmissions and four-cylinder engines, they loved them. The ones with automatics, not so much. Because when they went out, and they went out all the time, even back then, it was like $3,500 up to rebuild them because they were all electronic, computer-controlled transmissions. Very, very difficult to rebuild. So they had that issue. Then they started putting bigger engines in. They put Honda V6 engines in them. And those were good engines. But then Honda said, you got to put the Honda coolant, not your stupid Dex Cool coolant. And GM said, it's our production line. We're putting Dex coolant. So then Honda said, we're not going to sell you our V6 engines anymore. So then Saturn started making their own GM V6 engines. They were piles of junk, and that led to the end of Saturn, really. They were so junky, the engines got blowing, and people didn't buy them anymore. So if you're going to buy a used one, get a four-cylinder one. They can be okay, and you can get them dirt cheap. Luke Carlson says, our third-generation Firebird's a good project car for beginners. Any tips? Thanks. I'd go a little bit earlier on the Firebirds myself. Those are kind of cheaply made. I personally would not be a big fan of the third-generation one. Now, if you like them, I mean, you can go right ahead. Simpler than the modern ones, that's for sure. GM electronics have gotten worse over time and more computerized. I'd go for the earlier generations if you want to do a Firebird. I wouldn't go for the later ones. They had a lot of problems with them, that generation. Canvas Boy says, my '08 Dodge Durango had an engine failure. No surprise there. I fixed it for $8,000. Ever since, my car's a smoking engine every time I start. What do you think it is? Well, you paid $8,000. They didn't fix your engine right. They have your engine rebuilt for $8,000. They should have rebuilt everything. Rings, bearings, cams, crank, pistons, everything. They did a lousy job. If it's smoking, that means they didn't rebuild it right. For that kind of money, heck, you should have just gotten an engine. Buy another engine for $8,000. You should have bought a new one, new engine. Not even remanufactured, a brand new one. For that kind of money, you got taken if it's smoking. Go back to whoever did it. See if you can get your money back if they're not going to make it so it doesn't smoke. They just did a lousy job. And I see that all the time. That's why I warn people about when they got an older vehicle and the engine goes out. If they can get a new one in, or a factory remanufactured one, go ahead if you want to spend that kind of money. But guys that just put engines in these days, a lot of times they go to a junkyard, just throw some used unit in. It's not worthwhile doing on most vehicles anymore. It really isn't. Andre Sarah says, Scotty, I got a '69 Ford Falcon Futura. Oh, that's cool. It hasn't been started in over 26 years. What should I do to get it running? The car was assembled in Chile. Wow. Watch my video, getting an old car running that hasn't started for years. That'll give you all the tips. Basically, you want to take all the spark plugs out, squirt some oil in them, then put a new battery in, and first just crank it over with the spark plugs out to see if the engine spins. Then if it spins, great. Put the spark plugs back in, spray a little starting fluid, make sure all the oil and fluids like the radiator full, and then see if you can get the thing running. But watch the video, it gives you a whole bunch of tips. Jern Julian says, Scotty, my '03 4.6 V8 F-150 is leaking power steering fluid. How do I know if it's the pump or just the hose? Power steering fluid, those pumps can put up like 1,600 PSI pressure. That's a lot of pressure. Generally, if it's a hose, look at the hose with the bright old flashlight. You know, I mean, I got a lot of good bright old flashlights. Just shine it in there and have somebody turn the wheel and look at the hose. And if you see it squirting out of the hose, you know the hose is leaking. If it's the pump, you'll see it leaking on the shaft of the pump and going down. And you want to pray it's not the rack, because if it's the rack, they generally leak at each end. If you squeeze those rubber boots and fluid leaks out, that means the rack's leaking, and it costs a fortune to put a rack on. Those are very expensive to do. Ozzy Crosby, can a clogged radiator or heater core cause pressure buildup in the engine? Well, yes, of course it can. Any kind of clogs, it's going to stop there, and then the engine that's building up heat, instead of sending that hot water into the radiator, it's blocked, so it will build up pressure. Here in Texas, we don't really need heat all that often, at least in South Texas. What we do is if a heater core, let's say, breaks down, we will bypass it. But when you do want to bypass it, you have to get a heater bypass hose kit. And you cut the two hoses going into the firewall and you splice them together with a kit. Because most engines today, if you just plug those hoses, that water has to circulate through the head too. So you want to keep it circulating, and if the heater core itself is clogged, yeah, that will clog some of that, and you can have overheating problems.
So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.